So what factors are beneficial to the development of industrial regions? That's what we're taking a look at with this PowerPoint slide. Um, so first, starting off, just identifying what's the difference between a basic industry and a non-basic industry. Basic industry is going to be where industries sell products to consumers that are outside of their settlement. Primarily, if you look at this map, we have the map where we have the picture of a car, because most manufacturing for cars, they're selling outside of their settlement. It would be like if we had a factory to sell or to make cars here in Mukwonago. We're selling beyond Mukwonago. We're not just selling to Mukwonago residents. We'd be selling out all around the country, maybe all around the world. So that's the idea of basic industry. Your market is not where you live. Prime examples would be the Pittsburgh steel industry, where they were obviously making steel for buildings, for the construction of skyscrapers, for the constructions of all kinds of materials. Also Silicon Valley out in California, where the computer chip is one of the basic industries that they have there. If you think of the location of Apple and Google and Microsoft, these large computer industries are located in Silicon Valley to highlight that basic industry. So a lot of places will get a nickname or something related to that basic industry to represent what they do. A non-basic industry is a secondary business. Secondary in the sense that you're selling your product to consumers within your settlement. What this means is you may have a factory in a location, but people are going to move and live close to that location. So because of that, you have a new industry coming up of constructing homes for the people that work there. That would be a non-basic industry. But then those people also are going to live in the area, so they're going to need a gas station or a grocery store. Those are non-basic industries because they are primarily selling to the people that live in that community. And this leads to what they refer to as the multiplier effect. The expansion of the economic base of a city because of basic and non-basic industries locating there. So in Pittsburgh you had the steel industry show up. Because of the steel industry, well, now they needed a shipping industry. So as shipping started showing up, a barge industry really grew out of Pittsburgh. So here we go. We have our factory, and then here comes our transportation activity. We have the trains and the barge to move the product out. But then as a result, we have home construction taking place. And now that you have people living in the community, you have movies taking place, or gas stations, grocery stores, and it just multiplies and multiplies based on the needs of the people in that area. But it's the basic and non-basic industries together. Those factors for industries to consider when they locate to certain areas is that cost versus revenue. So this is a little econ recap, but the cost is going to be how much money is going to be spent with your business. What are the costs going to be? And are they going to be changing based on where you're located? Also, revenue, which is the money coming in. In looking at these things, looking at costs for businesses, there are fixed costs, which are costs that do not fluctuate based on the quantity that's ordered. And then there's variable costs, where the cost does change based on the amount that's ordered. Sometimes when places are ordering large amounts, they're able to get a discount because it can fill one truck, and so they get it at a lower cost because the place that's shipping it is not having that truck go to multiple areas. It's just one location, so they're able to reduce costs that way. That variable cost used to encourage more purchases to try to kind of stimulate that industry, kind of keep things going. So at this point with the students, take a quick break, review this term, time-space compression. Ultimately, time-space compression is that diminishing distance obstacles. The example we used in class at the beginning of the year is the idea that 500 years ago, how long would it take to get a message from Europe to the Americas? it would take months. And then 100 years ago, how long would it take? It would probably take a few weeks, maybe a month and a half. And then, today, how long would it take? It's instantaneous. You send an email, boom, it's there. Or you Skype, boom, it's there. So those distance obstacles get diminished with the increasing technology. Okay, that comes into play with industrialization. What can get a product to the consumer faster and cheaper? At this point, the students can go through the anticipation guide because they're going to have a pretty good idea what's good about trucking, what's good about trains, and then we'll just kind of recap to add on to that afterwards. So here's what you can add on afterwards. Trucks, they're great because they're easy, they're quick, they can go anywhere the roads go. The negatives is the environmental constraints. When you get bad weather, high wind, you'll have trucks that are in danger of tipping over, or especially if you think about the winter time, icy roads, when you have traffic backed up. So traffic issues is going to be another downfall to trucking. Trains, greater fuel efficiency. So you can transport larger amounts of a product. Very heavy loads because they're very, very strong. And they don't use as much fuel to transport the same amount of goods. Plants will build train tracks right to their dock. So industries, factories, a lot of times one of the things they do is they will have train tracks leading right to the docks of the factory just because it's such a great way to move and transport heavy materials, especially if you're a place that's constantly using heavy materials. If you think about a coal industry, when they're going ahead and they're refining the coal, they may have train tracks coming in to transport all of the coal coming from the mining areas, because they're always going to be going to that location, so it's just easier and cheaper. These break of bulk points, make sure the students have written down, it's when goods are unloaded from one form of transportation to another. So a lot of times it may come in on a train, but at that point they're going to need to be dispersed. You unload and put those items on trucks to get to another area. Planes, fastest delivery method to the market. Awesome. They're able to access those remote areas that don't have roads, that don't have train tracks. However, it is also the most expensive form of transportation for these products. Pipelines, if you are transporting liquid, are phenomenal. They transport gas, they transport liquid very, very quickly. It's very expensive, but fast and safe. So it's expensive to kind of get started. One aspect is if you think about whatever's moving through there. I know the Alaskan pipeline, they talk about the challenges because of the friction that's created with the amount of oil moving through this pipeline. And oil is not something you want to heat up. You don't want to have high friction. It's very explosive. So the science behind using solar energy to cool the pipeline so that the oil does not become too warm is a large challenge that they have, that engineers have figured out. But this Alaskan pipeline is 800 miles long. Starts in northern Alaska, where there's often freezing permafrost, so the pipeline you see is actually above ground. And then as it gets further south it can go below ground in other areas. So the extraction point is Valdez. So many people have heard about the Valdez oil spill. Not sure where the students are on that. You could always ask. Shipping is another great form of transportation. They're small barge ships to carry large cargo. A lot of times you'll see grain. Overseas, this is the preferred method of transportation. It's quite slow, but it's very, very efficient. Now, when you look at how much can be carried by a barge, they can carry 1,500 tons in comparison to a rail car, which is 100 tons. And if you think about having a big line of train cars, 10,000 tons is what's carried on a 100-car unit. Semi-truck, 26 tons. Looking at the amount that they're able to carry is phenomenal. And then the energy that's used. Number of miles per gallon on a barge gets close to 514 miles per gallon. The trains, 202 miles per gallon. The trucks, 59 miles per gallon. So you can see the difference in transportation costs and what that's going to be. So of transportation points available, what would most likely require a break of bulk point? In other words, what items can't you move very easily? Trains are limited to where they go, so more than likely trains are going to have a break of bulk point. Planes are going to airports, so they're going to have a break of bulk point. Really everything can. Okay, so now with the location of industries, you have agglomerations, which is a centralization of features of an industry for the mutual benefit of the industry as a whole. Pretty much you have industries get together. So like businesses help each other out. They create small industrial cities. So if you think of businesses that are related to building a car, you might have the factory, the car factory, but businesses that just make the seat that goes in cars, they'll locate near that car factory. So they're helping each other out that way. An analogy is with shopping malls. Montani needs a pair of jeans, so I go to the mall. And when I'm there, sweet, sweatshirt, I'll pick that up too. And then I go into another store and gosh, here's a pair of shoes. All things that I pick up because I see them, they're cool, so they all benefit, but really I just went to the mall to get a pair of jeans. And so that's kind of the idea of an agglomeration and the benefit. When it comes to cars, you have General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, all benefiting from being close to each other. They're all located in the Detroit area. Transportation cost of materials is lower because of that, because when they want to order tires that get shipped in, they're all being shipped to Detroit. It's not, if they were spread out, then they would have to have a small order going to Detroit, an order going to Milwaukee, an order going to another city. But because they're all located in the same area, they're able to help each other out to keep that transportation cost low. So the growth pole is an area that attracts industry, investments, and workers. It creates economic activity to surrounding areas. For example, when you have good communities with a good school, that creates a growth pole attracting people to that area. It attracts industries to say, hey, we're going to go ahead in this area because there's a good education system. We know employees are going to want to live there, and so that's going to benefit us. And so that attracts them. Good housing in the areas is also another growth pole. When people look at areas to move into, they look at the neighborhood, they look at the schools to see if it's an area that they want to come to. So you can kind of walk around this. This is the idea of that growth pole. When you have a new industry showing up, it creates more jobs, especially in construction, infrastructure, which increases the purchasing power, in which case now you have improved pool of trained labor because people are being trained in these jobs, which increases a higher demand for other services like schools, stores, hospitals, which then increases population, which then increases the income for people that are there, which increases the tax base. And now you have more construction taking place. And so now we have officially a growth pole, which leads to invention and innovation to bring in new common industries or new industries altogether. The cumulative causation is a successful agglomeration that attracts more agglomerations. They continue to grow. However, there is a point where they get too big and they actually hurt each other and they start breaking apart, which is that deglomeration, the progressive closure or downsizing of manufactured industries in a certain place. And then you have areas that used to be a strong industrial powerhouse like the steel belt, and then as the deglomeration takes place, you have a lot of factories moving out, and as those factories move out, other businesses close down, and we now have what's referred to as the Rust Belt. That should take care of things, and all set.